In this video, I'm going to show you how to make my super sturdy trellises for my raised beds, as you can see behind me, in under an hour. Hey guys, and welcome back to Mini Urban Farm, a channel about urban homesteading and urban gardening in the suburbs. Now, I've gotten a lot of comments about my raised beds and a lot of friends and family asking me if I bought my raised beds, my trellises, all of that. So I actually made every single one of my raised beds and all of the trellises as well. These trellises are very sturdy. They are also very easy to make. I did an entire video where I broke down the cost of the trellis, how much the raised beds cost, how much the trellis cost, all of that. So I'll link it up above if you want to know exactly how much they will cost you to make. However, I will say that the majority of my trellises, just like the one today, I made out of scrap wood. So I broke down the cost in case you bought them, at Home Depot or Lowe's or at some hardware store. If you bought the lumber, that's approximately how much it would cost you. But today's trellis cost me about $15, which is just for the trellisy part, the actual plastic part that I had to put on, because I had the wood deck screws and I had a whole bunch of scrap lumber as well. Now, I will say that my original trellises for my raised beds were made with pocket screws. Now, if you've never heard of pocket screws, they are a little bit more difficult to work with because you actually have to have the tool to make the pocket holes for the pocket screws to go into. So this version of it I just made with decking screws. They are just normal decking screws, self-drilling, so I didn't have to pre-drill any of the holes, which is much better if you're trying to do this quickly and efficiently. But because I'm using regular decking screws, it does mean that the trellises are not perfectly flush in a square. They just have a little bit of an indent going across the 2x4s instead of the other ones, which just don't have that indent. Now, to me, this really wasn't a big deal, so I went with the easier and the cheaper route. Alright, so without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Okay, so the first step was to measure and cut everything to size. For the height, I used 58 inches just so that it matched all of the other trellises for the raised beds. I had used scrap wood previously, so I wanted to make sure that they all matched. And for the width, I used 21 inches, and for the length, I cut everything to 6 feet. Next, I assembled the vertical pieces with self-drilling deck screws. I made sure they were mostly straight, but I didn't really worry too much about getting them to be perfectly straight and flush. And then I did the same thing for the other side of the raised bed. Next up, I assembled the 6-foot pieces and had Alan hold them in place while I popped 2 decking screws into either end, holding the 6-foot pieces in place by sandwiching them between the vertical 2x4s. After that, I added in the 2 remaining pieces, each of which were 21 inches, and screwed them onto the inside of the trellis so that the vertical pieces were still on the outside. Okay, so for the trellis part, I'm using this. It is like this plastic netting, right? You can get it at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever. I got it, I think it was like $15 for the entire roll, which is 40 by, I think it was 25 feet. So, I mean, it's pretty inexpensive. It's not chicken wire. It is made out of plastic. It comes in, I think it comes in like a black and a green, but this is really all they had. Now, some of my raised beds have this on it, the majority of them do, and then some of them have the ones that are actually larger holes in between. I would recommend getting the one with larger holes in between just because some plants have a problem getting in and out of these tiny little holes, especially when they're first like developing new leaves. But this is all they had, so this works perfectly fine. The rest of my raised beds are using this. So what I'm gonna do, obviously you can see this is much wider. Now these are 24 inches across. This is definitely wider than 24 inches. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to put it here all the way across. I would recommend starting on one end like this. I'm gonna put it all the way down. I'm gonna leave a gap right here. I'm gonna leave a gap so that the plants can come out this way and trellis up the sides. And then I'm going to take a staple gun. All right, there's just a plain staple gun. I'm gonna staple the edges like this, and I'm gonna staple the edges like that on both sides all the way up and down. And then when I'm done, I'm gonna just take scissors and cut off whatever is extra. Now, normally when you are doing a trellis, right, you wanna do the trellis before all of your plants are this big, these are actually pretty big tomato plants, but it kind of just got away from me to do it. So I am just going to ensure that these plants are on the outside. So what I'm going to do is basically just take them, push them out, and then make sure that the trellis is kind of like sandwiched in between the plants and the actual box. Alright guys, so this is the finished product. You can see the wood build right there. It looks pretty much identical to the other ones. You can't really see any differences. And then the mesh, as I mentioned, this is the mesh with like the kind of smaller holes. This one over here has a few bigger holes, and you can just see it's much easier for these to go in and out, but they didn't have that one this time around, so I just went with this. It works perfectly fine as well. You can see that it's also pretty level because when I was tightening it and stapling it in place, I was kind of pulling it at the same time to make sure it was pretty flat and sturdy. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up my trellis build for my raised beds. It took me under an hour to get everything done, from measuring, cutting, and assembling the actual trellis. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I enjoyed building it. And tune in for more urban gardening, urban homesteading, urban chicken videos, all of that good stuff. I will see you in the next one. Bye!